Hi, Nina. God, I'm... Wait, did I? Ooh. I don't think my brain's here. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. That is a butt. My brain is fried. Seriously, a lack of sleep, early starts. Yeah. Wait, why does it be whoops. Because I'm planning to do just a small stream. I was thinking of doing the just tier lists. I have very little forethought into what I'm doing. But then what's new? Okay, that isn't fair. I do plan things out more normally, but of late it's just been like fly by the seat of my pants. Particularly since move, job stuff, study stuff, no ideas. Well, not no ideas, but it's just like just this constant state of feeling like I need to catch up on everything. So yeah, probably another week of just flying by the seat of my pants at least, and then hopefully start to rein everything in and get some order of things. Maybe. Yeah, it's just, it's very frustrating. Particularly when it's like, I'm doing all this with the intention of being able to stream more, and yet I'm streaming less. I'm glad at least the text outline there is working as well as I thought it would. Means it's popping a bit better. That being said, like, the on-screen text is almost impossible to read on mobile. You'd have to blow it up so damn much. It is what it is, what it is. Well, since the bot's doing its job of posting the Discord, what I plan to do with things as far as like Discord versus Twitter, I feel like I'm going to stick to doing just random thought posts on Twitter. And any art stuff, it'll be work in progress, will go on the Discord. More of the finished sort of stuff will end up on the Twitter. Yeah. The problem is I've got insomnia. Oh god, I've had insomnia for months. Thanks to the last job. No, not the last job, the job before that. Where I worked the graveyard shift all the time. So my body clock is still stuck in awake at night. And going to like this complete flip round where I'm meant to be getting up like really early in the morning. And then my body's like, I'm tired, I want to sleep, but I'm not tired. Shut up, brain. No, listen, just keep going. Just keep going. And it's like, my god. I've only got another week more of opens, and then I can get those 2 hours of sleep back. And I might function a bit better with like 6 to 7 hours as opposed to 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Or, you know, have the option to actually sleep in on occasion. That, and I haven't had much in the way of 3 days, thanks to just the sheer insanity of it all. Yesterday was bonkers. So, I've opened. The person who was coming in after me called in sick. So, the assistant manager, who's the one in charge at the moment, is now trying to organise someone else to come in while I'm stuck there on my own. Turns out they couldn't get anyone. And this is not just our site, this is across any of the near sites. So nobody could come in to take over for me. And I'm like, I need to leave before 4 o'clock. I can't stay here all night. Thank God I had a reason to get out of there. Because if I hadn't, I could have been there until like 6, 7, 8 o'clock. I very well could have possibly ended up working a bit over 13 hours straight, no breaks. on my own. Fucking hell. Be the reliable person. Take on extra responsibility. Be the only one that can open other than the manager and assistant manager. So when they need someone else, it becomes my job now. Yep. Such is my life. It'd be crazy, and I just have to deal with it. Oh well, at least the work itself isn't hard. It's just stand around most of the day. Occasionally put something on the shelf. Go clean things. Stand around some more. Doesn't help, like, the place is dead at the moment. Everywhere is getting really quiet because the price of fuel. Who wants to drive about when fuel's already over $2 a litre? God, I don't want to get started talking about the price of fuel because I swear every person who rocks up has something to say about the price of fuel at work. Context: work at a service station. Again. Nobody can shut up about the price of fuel because it is literally our business. Customer service sucks in general. I think I've stalled enough. Well, I'm not stalling, I'm giving people time to appreciate the updated design because I'm pretty sure this is the first stream where we've got the new chat box up and the vine color is different from last time. I used to work, what was it? From midnight till 7, 8 in the morning. 4 days a week, every week, for 3 years. Hence why I've got insomnia. Now, I work anywhere from 4 hours to 8 hours normally, though I have done a couple of 9 and 10 hour shifts. I do opens, I do closes, I do crossover, I do my head in. The job has its perks in that it's not very demanding and, well, it's minimum pay, so, eh. I slept during the day. That was it. Though it was hellish because I would then have to flip my routine around in order to be able to do anything. So I'd stack all my overnights one after the other. So I'd do 4 nights, and then I'd flip around and I'd have 2 days where I was actually awake during the daytime, and then flip back around again. I did that for 3 years, and during the last year of that was when I started streaming. So I was doing streaming on top of all that. Oh, God, the insanity of it all. But it just got to the point where it's like, I'm not coping. I can't keep doing the overnights. The insomnia and everything is starting to get to me. But if I trade my overnights for day shifts, I'm going to go from like these 7-hour shifts to 4-hour shifts, the same drive out there. Because it wasn't like, oh, just around the corner. No, it was like a 3/4 of an hour drive out to the place in the dead of night. A 4-hour shift would basically cost me that and fuel, or at least half. So it's like the short shifts weren't worth my time. So yeah, I quit that. I then did lawn mowing for a while, and now I've started at another servo. Thankfully, there are no graveyard shifts, so that's a bonus. But yeah, it's something to pay the bills. Literally. That's the only reason I have a job at the moment, is to pay bills. And for games, because of course. But that's an aside. Like, seriously, if I wasn't studying and working, I'd probably be just full ball into this, doing as much stuff related to stream as possible, but study to get a better job, work a job to pay bills to support myself a bit. So that I can get through study, so that I can get a better job, so that I'm able to earn a bit more, so I don't have to work as much, so that I can stream more. I swear that makes sense at some point, but it doesn't feel like it anymore. Anywho, I probably should change over. No background music, but here we are. The different Zelda games, and I think I've put them in chronological order. I think so. It's like, I don't remember where these four were released exactly. I know that Ages and Seasons were the first Capcom Zelda games. Then you have the two Four Swords games, which came out before Wind Waker. Minish Cap came out after. I don't know where Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks sit in relation to friggin' Twilight, but I'm pretty sure that I've got all of them in the right order besides that. And nobody can see my mouse. Properties. Capture cursor is on. Then why? Oh, it wasn't. I wasn't clicked on the window. So there's Ages, Seasons. That's Four Swords. Four Swords Adventure, Minish, Phantom, and Spirit Tracks. Wait, why are you here? You shouldn't be here. Nyeh. You go over here. Actually, is Triforce Heroes before Breath of the Wild or after? I don't know. And you were over here on that one. Okay, so instead of doing standard S, A, B, C, D, because I don't particularly like this ranking system, I'm going to change them up. Hang on, you go into settings. English. I swear it is my first language. So we have won't play, might play, under 50%. So these three are solely for titles that I haven't played enough of or haven't played. So won't play are basically, I don't ever want to play this game. It is either infamous or unappealing. Might play basically means I don't believe I've played the game before, but I would like to. And under 50%, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. I haven't gotten past halfway in the game before. So we'll start by ranking these ones. So immediately, I have not played through the first two Zelda games. I might have played Zelda 1 before, but I have no recollection of it. Okay, now we have... Oh, I forget what this one's called. Think. It is Zelda. It's not called the Windfish. What is it? Link's Awakening? Yeah, it's Zelda 1, Link to the Past, Link's Awakening. No, that one's Link to the Past. No, that's Zelda 2 Adventure of Link. That's Link's Awakening. That's Link to the Past. So, Awakening, I have not played the original or the first remake. Why does that look wrong? Breath of the Wild. Fair enough. There's a speedrunning chat base. Why have I got the speedrunning one there? I might have to fix that later. I've played most of them. But back to Awakening, I've not played the original. I know there's a Game Boy Color remake of it, which I haven't played either. The one I have played is the newest remake for the Switch. And I don't remember where I got up to with it. So I'm going to put it in under 50% because I'm not 100% sure. Next, Link to the Past. Again, this is an odd one. I swear I've played the game before, and I can't recall when, but I've done randomizers of it, so I think I can give it a rating. Ages and Seasons, I've touched, I've played a little bit of them, but I haven't finished them before. Now we have the Four Swords games. I have played either one or both of these before. But because of how they work, since you need multiple people to play it, I'm not sure if I'd ever play them, so I'm going to put them in won't play. And same for Fountain Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. I've played a little bit of one of them, but for the most part, I've got no interest in playing either of them immediately. Triforce Heroes, I've only done 50%, so I won't do that. So that deals with our unrated ones, officially, which just leaves the rest of them here, which are mostly the mainline console ones. So we need to add a few more rows. Okay. We might change the colors as well. How many rows do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, I care about the aesthetic. Okay, so bottom row here is terrible. Then we have bad. Yeah, that didn't work. What am I doing? Bad. Pass. Great. And because I'm not partial to the letter grading system because it's arbitrary as to what C means. So I'll go through each one. Terrible. Would never play it again. Would not recommend it. Bad. It has some flaws, but is enjoyable in spite of them. Pass. There is nothing particularly good or bad about it. It is just middle of the road. Good. It may have some flaws, but its good points outweigh them. Great. Has very little flaws. Is very much something that you would play over and over again. And excellent. There are little to no flaws. It is as close to perfect, in my opinion, as the game could be. So that gives you an idea of what these ratings mean. And so we'll start out with Ocarina of Time for this. So to start things off, Ocarina of Time is my first Zelda. It's the one I grew up with. And I'm just going to give it good. It's clear that I'm not biased by nostalgia. Oh dear. So why do I give it a good? There are a lot of things holding it back. Combat is very repetitive at times. I am looking at the games and just in their vanilla aspects, so unmodified, no randomizer stuff, just as the game is. Ocarina is kind of repetitive in its combat. It is slow at times, but all around, it's a good game, and definitely, as far as 3D Zelda goes, probably one of the better ones to start with. So, since we followed up with Zelda, we'll follow up with its partner game, Majora's Mask. Now, I put it in bad, but don't get me wrong, I love this game. But I'm putting it bad for a couple of reasons. One, it's got a lot of the same flaws that Ocarina does, being that it was built in the same engine. it is much more repetitive because of the 3-day cycle. And this is probably the main reason why I put it in bad. It's too short. I feel like you could have squeezed in another dungeon or two, but at the same time, there's nowhere to put it, but it's that desire for it that I feel makes it, that holds it back. That being said, as a randomizer, Majora's Mask is super fun, and it is definitely a Zelda worth playing, particularly for its randomizer aspect, because it is much more open than Ocarina tends to be, and that's just due to the way the two communities have done the randomizer. OOT's rando community has much more of a focus on the speedrunning aspect, whereas the Majora's Mask one seems to be more about the chaos and taking advantage of its more non-linear path. And that's part of the 3-day cycle. So the things that I listed as problems in the main game are its advantages in the randomizer. So next, I guess we should talk about A Link to the Past. Now, with respect to the Zelda timeline, not the Zelda timeline, the games and their history, a lot of the stuff that Ocarina does came from Link to the Past. And A Link to the Past is a solid game. It is tough, and I do not like the Ganon fight in this game. So I'm going to give it a good, just because there are a few things that I'm not 100% happy with it. Similar to Ocarina of Time, you've got 3 starting dungeons. It is a bit of a slow starter, but the map opens up considerably quicker, and the second half of the game is very much less linear than what Ocarina is. Because Ocarina, you have to do the dungeons in order up to the last 2. You can do Spirit Temple and Shadow Temple out of order, but when it comes to Link to the Past, any of the Dark World temples you can do in any order, despite the fact they're numbered, which is so weird. But I feel like the top-down perspective, it's not for everyone, and that's why I've left it in good, because it is very retro in that respect. So if you're more of a 3D adventure person, that would be a fair bit of a turn-off. Next is Wind Waker. I don't have to put anything for context there. Wind Waker's dungeons are fun. The problem is there are so few of them. Out of all the games that I've officially ranked, so from here up, Wind Waker has the least dungeons, but one of the biggest overworlds so far, and it is so empty. Like, sure, there's an island in each of the squares, but most of them are nothing events that lead to chests. But here's the thing. I can't remember if I actually played through Wind Waker or not. So I feel bad putting it there. So it's a game I need to play. I've watched so many playthroughs of it that I feel like through osmosis, I thought I played the game. But through doing that randomizer that I did a while back, I realized I never actually played it. Which is kind of sad. Artistically, Wind Waker is great. It has a great visual aesthetic. And it has aged really well. As opposed to like Ocarina and Majora, where that 3D, early 3D style is either something you like or something you don't. I just happen to really like it. But beyond like its aesthetic and its dungeons, it feels like Wind Waker is lacking personally. But I feel that in order to give it a fair shot, I need to do a proper playthrough of it. So next is Minish Cap. I feel like giving it a pass. There's nothing really wrong about it other than the light arrows. They have a very specific way that you need to get them, and you can miss them entirely, which I learnt while doing the 100% run that I've still got to finish. I've got a little bit of cleanup in the final boss. But it's like there's nothing wrong with it. It could fit a dungeon in, but it is satisfying. That being said, 100%ing it at times feels more of a chore than fun. So it's not a good game, it's not bad, but it's something that you enjoy playing through once, at least vanilla. Okay, now we're getting into the more divisive stuff. Twilight. So, I'm going to be honest, I enjoyed Twilight when I played it. I have gone back to play it before, so that gives you an idea. Like, both Ocarina and Majora's Mask I've played through a few times each. Twilight I think I've only played through twice. It's not terrible. It's not great. Great is a very hard rating to get, and terrible was like, ugh. But I kind of feel hard-pressed to put it higher than bad. And the reason I say this is, similar to Ocarina, it is very, very linear for a Zelda game. And the world is very much done in chunks. You go from point A to point B and you do all this stuff here until you can move on to the next area. Instead of Zelda's more cookie, what is it? Breadcrumb sort of approach. So in Ocarina, you go from location A to location B, but you only have to go and do like one or two things, and then everything else in the area is optional. In Twilight, you need to do almost everything in an area before you get the flag to move on to the next, or all the optional stuff is restricted. So the game is very confined during the early parts, and then when you get into, I want to say like the final third of the game, it opens up immensely with all this side content, and it feels like it's just padding out the ending part of the game. The art style also hasn't aged the best, which is why the HD version looks superior, because it went for a more realistic art style. That said, like, there's nothing wrong with it, like, gameplay-wise. And it's definitely a Zelda game that I would at least play again on stream. But I don't think I'd ever do a randomizer of it. And that seems to be mostly what I've seen from the community as well. It's probably one of the quieter randomizers. Skyward Sword. Motion controls. Okay, let's be fair to Skyward Sword. It is fun, but it has a lot of problems. So the big one is motion control sword combat is a pain in the neck. You need a specific type of Wiimote in order to play it on the original. So that's a pain in the neck. I don't know about the Switch version, but I haven't heard anything good about the motion controls in that. Next off, it is really lackluster when it comes to bosses. You have Girahim 3 times. I'm pretty sure you fight the Imprisoned 4 times. And other than those two, there is 1, 2, 3 unique bosses, another boss that's repeated twice, and then the final boss. And that's it. It is really light on combat to make up for the fact that you have to use the motion controls. And that really hampers some of the fun. The puzzles are creative, but very few, because again, they don't have a lot of dungeons. And more of the creative ones are towards the back half of the game. Also, similar to Wind Waker, Skyward Sword has, again, one of the fewer number of dungeons. So, Majora's Mask has 4 proper dungeons. Wind Waker has, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Wind Waker also has 4 proper dungeons. Skyward Sword, if I remember correctly, has 7. So you have 3 preliminary, 3 second half, and then that weird bonus final dungeon. Now that last dungeon is kind of an oddity in that it is, I'm going to give away the mechanic of it, but that's fine. It kind of takes the aspect of like a mold your own dungeon by moving the rooms around. And while that is a novel idea, it has to be simplified so much that you can move around all the rooms and complete the dungeon, that the rooms themselves are pretty basic and boring, and the puzzle is at its simplest form that it can be, so it's not too complicated for younger players. So again, it's a novel idea that's just been hamstringed. Oh wait, there is another boss that's repeated at least 3 times. I forgot that. Ah, God. Also, like Twilight, they both have stealth sections. Twilight's was okay. You did it, I think, 3, 4 times. I don't know how many times you did it in Skyward Sword, but they're fun when they're spaced out and don't stick around too long. But I feel like, I don't know why, but I feel like Twilight's wasn't as fun. I'm not entirely sure why. It might just be a bias or just bad memory on my part. But yeah, I don't think I ever want to play Skyward Sword again, at least not the original version. But I also don't want to go out of my way and buy the Switch version, so yeah. So next up we have Link Between Worlds, which is rehashing Link to the Past. Whoop, didn't mean to do that. Rehashing Link to the Past's world. It's kind of a sequel and kind of not. I don't know where to put it, actually. It's either pass or bad, because I wouldn't call it terrible, not like Skyward Sword. So here's the thing with it. You've got basically the same sort of thing going on as A Link to the Past, in terms of you have the same dungeon locations. Most of the dungeons have a similar layout. So if you've played Link to the Past, it's pretty similar. The renting system of weapons does mean that it isn't linear, but at the same time, you will end up renting maybe one weapon, and then because you get so many rupees in the game, you will buy all the weapons out. So it's like, again, novel mechanics, but they're not executed the best way because of the ease that they can make the game. I don't know. I don't know if I want to put it in bad, because it's not really flawed. It's just middle of the road. This is the hard part to call with like pass and bad, because like there are some of the bad games, particularly Majora's Mask, that I'd say are more fun than some of the games in pass. But I feel like I have to be, what's the word? Critical of them in terms of their design and gameplay. So that's kind of where I've gone with everything. So I like Majora's Mask more than Minish or Link Between Worlds. But there are problems with it, and I have to be real with those problems. So the last one is Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is probably the hardest one to rate because it is the least Zelda-like of all the Zelda games. It has the same enemies. It has like the lore and everything. Yes, I do. I really do like the word fool, and at least referring to myself as the fool. That also was unintentionally a reference to I think it's the second Phoenix Wright game. Sidetracking myself. Breath of the Wild. As far as like an exploration game, it is good. Like, you will always end up finding yourself going towards things and finding new stuff to do. And the world building is fun. The problems really come down to the divine beasts are pretty basic. And they're the only dungeons that you have, really. Then you have the weapon degradation and breaking, and I feel that really hamstrings the play cycle, particularly since so many of the weapons break so quickly. Part of the reason is you have limited inventory, they break so that you can pick up new weapons, and they hand weapons out all over the place. But I feel like from a player's perspective, you want to have certain weapon types always. So like, you want something that can produce fire. You may want an electrical or ice weapon, but since you can get those with arrows, having a physical weapons of them, not so much. Bomb arrows are basically useless since you have remote bombs for the most part. They're useful in some circumstances. Most of like your swords, spears, and that comes down to personal preference. You'll pretty much always want to have a shield because of how broken parrying is. Which means that two-handed weapons tend to be less favored than one-handed. But it all comes down to like, the ultimate sword in the game basically makes all other weapons redundant once you get a hold of it. Or at least everything other than maybe the staves. But that kind of gives you my idea on like how I feel about that. And so, weirdly enough, I'm going to call Breath of the Wild a bad game. It has a lot of little flaws. It is fun. And it works with all those flaws, but it's not for everyone. And that's kind of where I feel like a game rated as bad is that it's something that's not for everyone, and that some people will go in and not enjoy the experience at all. The weapon breaking is frustrating. The lack of dungeons and puzzles can be frustrating. I mean, don't get me wrong, the lots of little shrines and that constant reward cycle can be fun, but it's not for everyone. So that's kind of why I've put it in bad. So you'll notice something interesting. I've put nothing in great, nothing in excellent. These two ratings are really hard to get in my system, because great, if there's any faults that I can point to and say this is annoying, I'm very hard pressed to call it great. And excellent is just you'd want to keep playing it over and over again, you can't put it down sort of thing. But yeah, that's kind of where I sit with the Zelda games. Granted, this isn't all the Zelda games. There are plenty of side titles. There's the CDI games, which, again, I would never play the CDI or crossbow training. Then we have both the Warriors games. I've played them. The original Hyrule Warriors. The original Hyrule Warriors has free versions and DLC where some of it's not backwards. So you've got the original version for the Wii U, the DS version, which had some extra stuff, and then you have the Switch version, which has all the stuff from the previous versions. They're janky as hell, and not everybody would enjoy the Warriors games, so I put them in bad. As for the more recent Warriors games, which is themed on Breath of the Wild, I feel almost inclined to put it in terrible. That game has a lot less characters, at least as far as I played through it, so it's technically an unrateable. But it is just... It's rough. I know there is more content for it now, but the Breath of the Wild Hyrule Warriors game, I wouldn't really go out of my way to go get if you were interested in trying a Warriors style game. There are much better ones. Particularly ones that are older than the recent stuff. So since we finished Zelda, yeah, I guess the next one would be to do the Pokemon games. Since that's the only other game series that I've played most of. Let's see if we can find one. Okay, mainline games. Let's see. We have Red, Blue, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Ruby. Yep, we have all of them here, and they're in a very weird order. So I'm going to fix that quickly. Black should be over here. Okay, there we go. So, same deal as last time. Won't play. Might play. Less than 50%. Okay, let's get these ones out of the road. So, I put all of Gen 1 and Gen 2 in here for a reason. So, the Gen 1 games are broken as hell, and they are very different to how the newer games play. I don't think that I could go back and play them since I'm so used to newer mechanics. I appreciate them for what they are, but I do not want to play them. It's a similar story for Gold and Silver. There are newer versions of the games that have the more recent mechanics, so I'll leave it there. So next would be the ones that I haven't beaten enough to rate them fairly. Oh wait, I forgot. I didn't play the Ultra games, and I don't have any interest in playing them, nor the Shining and Brilliant, or whatever the Pearl one was. Shining Diamond, and I've got the originals, and I didn't feel like dropping money on them. And I think other than the introduction of Fairy, they play pretty much the same. I don't think I spelled that right. Oh well. That isn't how you spell bad. Okay, we'll leave it like that. So, in order to be fair to the games, the pairs, I'm just going to rate them the same. So if I put Fire Red in one category, Leaf Green is going to go with it, just as an example. So we'll start with Ruby and Sapphire, which are the first two mainline games that I played, or at least I think they're the first two. I either played Ruby or Fire Red first, but I know that Ruby was the first one I beat. Where do I want to put Ruby? I feel like I want to put it in bad. The reason being, you've got a couple of very big stone walls, particularly Norman, which makes Ruby and Sapphire some tough games, and your selection of Pokemon is kinda limited. It's also reasonably easy to get through, so again, I don't mind the games. They do have a place in my heart, so to put it. But going back to them, since you still have moves tied to type, it could be a little rough. But this is the introduction of abilities. We have the split between special attack and special defense. So you could go back and play them, but it's rough. I'm going to put Fire Red and Leaf Green in the same category for pretty much the same reasons. They're probably the best version of Kanto that we have. I know we've got the Let's Go games, but we'll get to them. Emerald. I want to deal with Emerald separately. As far as the games go, Emerald has more stuff than Ruby and Sapphire. It has a changed up. Its Pokemon are changed up. Gym leaders are different, so I want to put it in might play. Simply because I haven't actually played Emerald. Ha ha ha. And just to save time, Platinum's going there as well. Diamond and Pearl. Oof. The fact that there are so few fire type in Diamond and Pearl is kind of an issue, because it limits what your fire type is and kind of hamstrings team building. the other thing is that the top of Mount Coronet is a pain in the neck. I'm going to put them in bad. It also, while I say like Platinum would probably be a good game, because it fixes up a lot of the issues. It adds in more Pokemon to the Pokedex. You have a lot of extra little content added in, and they do change up the gym leaders a bit, or at least their Pokemon and the order that you fight them in. So if you want to play a Gen 4 game, like out of Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, or the remakes, I'd say go play Platinum. Heart Gold and Soul Silver, terrible. Just flat out terrible. The leveling curve is very slow and shallow. They're very easy to play. Most of the gym leaders are a joke in the first half. So the game can feel very easy. And then you get to the end where you want to do the red fight because it's felt so easy up to this point. And they have so many HM requirements to climb. HMs, while not too much of an issue, that climb to fight the best trainer in the game, requiring, I think you need Surf, Waterfall, Rock Climb, and either Rock Smash or Strength. So essentially you need 4 HMs. And of those, maybe Surf is the only one that you want, because you still have... No, we have the physical special split, so... Waterfall is a physical move, Surf is a special move. Okay. Black, White, Black 2, and White 2. Ow. Oh dear. So, the story in these games are probably the most extravagant that Pokemon has done up to this point, in terms of the timeline, and because of the backlash that Black and White got for various things, stories weren't as big of a thing in the Pokemon games going afterwards, particularly with how X and Y didn't do well because its story was lackluster, and people weren't happy with the story in Sun and Moon and the Ultras. So yeah, that's why Sword and Shield has such a backseat story for the most part. So Black and White didn't do too much to change the boat, but its experience system is what's going to put it in terrible. So Black and Black and White 2 have a very specific system with its with experience, which is unique to the Gen 5 games. As you level up, you get less experience from lower level Pokemon. It's basically an anti-grinding mechanic, which is so annoying. It wasn't needed. It just makes it harder to build Pokemon up, and if you have a small party, you essentially are hamstringing the potential experience that Pokemon can get. So you may want to play once, but never more than once. As far as randomizers go, Black and White are the Gen 5 are your last pixel art generations. All the ones from them and earlier are able to do randomizers and modifiers for, and one of the things you can do with it is get rid of that mechanic. So, for less than legal reasons, if you're wanting to do ROM hacks of a pre-Gen 6 game, Black and White are a good choice. Or the Black and White 2 games. Do not do randomizers of Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Because the low leveling curve and low level Pokemon stats are more important between whether you win a fight or lose, it's a nightmare. Okay, moving on to the next game. We've got X and Y. X and Y is the introduction of fairy type, which is really nice. I'm going to add another row just below. Other side. So this is just the other game in the series. So I'm going to put just the partner games down here, just so that it's easier to see the other games. Ugh. Okay. So the ones I've left in here are the actual copy that I played. So moving on to X and Y. So X and Y, you got the introduction of fairy in the attempt to rebalance the game. A bunch of moves were added, and it's like a real sort of overhaul of a lot of like battle mechanics, trying to improve EVs and IVs. But overall, it is such a boring game. The story is bland, most of the fights are pushovers, and you just suddenly beat the champion. Like, out of all the games I've played, Y's champion is the most forgettable and is just, wait, we had that fight? The villain's also kind of forgettable. In fact, the whole of Y is pretty forgettable, other than the fact that it had mega evolutions. I feel like this is biased. Ruby is terrible. No, the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I say this is biased because technically it belongs here. I could not beat the fight on Mount Chimney with the boss, I think it's Magma. And the reason being was that my Pokemon, despite being higher level, seemed to have garbage stats. So I don't know if Gen 6 they started giving trainer, or at least key trainers, proper IV and EV spreads or something, but that fight, despite using the same team that I'd used back in Ruby, I couldn't beat. Hell, I was even using my starter. I dropped my starter early on in Ruby. So I can't work out how I couldn't beat that fight, but yeah, that's why I put it here. But I'd still consider Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire pretty terrible games. They're very much a retread with some nice features, but other than that, yeah. Regular Sun and Moon. So I didn't play Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and I don't have an interest because it's the same game with just like some cosmetic differences, as I understand it. And Sun and Moon have been like, they've been fun at times, so I want to put them in pass. The change up to gyms to being these very specific challenges rather than just a gym fight is a nice change up. But what they did for the game, they can't really ever do again. So it's a pass. It's not a bad game, but it's not like anything excellent. I definitely don't feel the urge, however, to play through Moon ever again. And part of that is Pokemon often burns me out from it. Eevee, I haven't done enough of it. It is fun to play through Johto again, and the change up of the overworld encounters, which we do see in Arceus and possibly the next game that they've announced. What was it? It was colors again. It was like Scarlet and Violet. That was introduced here, which came from the Pokemon Go series. So that was fun. It's definitely novel. And if you haven't played a Johto game and are willing to try something new on a Switch rather than try and track down a way to play Fire Red, go for it with the Let's Go games. I just prefer Eevee over Pikachu because screw Pikachu. God. Okay, Sword and Shield. So, not counting the Let's Go games, Sword and Shield are the first mainline ones on a console. Everything before this has been handheld, and Sword and Shield have some very rough patches. The whole Dynamax, Gigantamax, whatever, is kind of boring, and I beat the game without using it, ever. So, let that be a lesson to it. It is not a very difficult game, except when you do the champion refight. Because you don't get to fight him the first time, there is a sudden level jump after the credits. It jumps up like 5. My team was a horrible matchup because he has a lot of like good coverage and a favoritism for like some really hard to break Pokemon. I think he has 2 pseudo legendaries, which is kind of insane. But overall, Shield is a pretty easy game, and as far as like not counting the DLC stuff, it's got a sort of limited pool in what Pokemon it has. And I feel like using the DLC to say, oh, it's got more Pokemon, it's got more content, it's better, isn't a fair point, because all the other games have had to live up on just their own content. So, yeah. Sword and Shield, fine, playing through it once, wouldn't want to play it again. Now we get to Legends, which I'm still playing through, but I'm more than halfway. So, where do we put Legends? I feel like I'm lying to everyone, but briefly. But yeah, Legends is a pretty excellent game, but I'd actually have to move it down to great to be fair to it. So Legends, as far as like a Pokemon game, is actually a terrible Pokemon game. But it is a great game nonetheless, and here's why. It's a terrible Pokemon game. There are little to no actual Pokemon fights. You can actually play through the game doing very little battles. You don't need to do gym fights. Hell, the big Pokemon, the Guardians, you don't even need to use Pokemon to beat them. I've beaten one without using Pokemon at all, and had realized that the one earlier that you can get away without having to use Pokemon to fight them. So essentially, Legends is a great game, but you don't need to use the mechanics that make Pokemon a game in it. And so that's why I feel it's not excellent. I know that feels like I'm like being very nitpicky, but to be fair, none of the Pokemon games got higher than pass at this point. So if I don't be nitpicky, I feel like I'm like how do you put it? Being biased to the game. Like, the movement is fun. Transport Pokemon has been a great idea since they came in Sun and Moon. Getting rid of the HMs was the best thing they could have done. The game, as you play it, feels like it opens up naturally, as opposed to what a lot of the other Pokemon games do, and you have very clear roadblocks. The open areas, again, something that was introduced in Sword and Shield, feel better than they did there, and I feel that because of the ride Pokemon and being able to climb up areas in manners that you shouldn't, that adds to the exploration. But again, battles are very minimal. But that said, like, Legends does a lot of stuff to overhaul the battle system. You have the strong and agile moves. Turns aren't just opponent you, opponent you. It's more of a action turn, not an action turn, an action commodity. So you can get multiple attacks in before the opponent does. You can use an agile move to try and get more attacks, or a strong move sacrificing a turn to do more power. And I feel that's a great mechanic, particularly since it costs extra move points in order to perform them. I know what they're technically called. I'm going to avoid using that word if I can. The other big overhaul is they've gotten rid of the IVs and EVs, which is great. Individual and effort value points were a pain in the neck. For a casual player, they were meaningless. For people who were into competitive play, they were just a nightmare of a hurdle, considering that having a Pokemon with bad IVs basically means you had to throw it out and start over again. With the system that they have now, where similar to how you can just build XP and give them XP candy and that to just level them up, you now also have, I believe it's called Grit Powder, which you can just put onto a Pokemon's stats and level those stats up individually, irrespective of combat. So that is great. That gets rid of a lot of the problems, but it keeps the mechanic of you can modify the stats of a Pokemon by how you want to train them. So I think the next game that comes out, if it takes the lessons from Arceus, like these good points, it could be another great, possibly excellent game. I wouldn't hold my breath though. This is the Pokemon Company. And as you can see, they haven't put out a good Pokemon style Pokemon game. Oh. Oh dear. I think the thing that comes to it at the end is that if you've played one Pokemon game, you've pretty much experienced every other Pokemon game. Each one has its own gimmick. And some have more Pokemon, some have less. Some have better variety, and some are very limited in what variety they have. It really comes down to, are the fights fun? Are the gyms or their equivalent, Sun and Moon, and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, any good? And that's kind of where the problem lies, is that a lot of them, the gyms are very samey up until you start getting to Black and White. And even then, like, I can't think of any standout gyms Not at the moment. I might be because I'm sleepy, but not really at the moment. And I feel like that's one of the big problems, is that Pokemon tries to be an RPG and a puzzle game. When it does puzzles well, it really doesn't. It never does its puzzles well for the gyms, and its fighting or its battle mechanics have been very limiting because of their one-on-one nature. Double battles was a great thing, but it's barely ever used outside of like competitive and a couple of very specific fights. Legends often throws you in situations of 2-on-1 or multiple on 1. So I feel like there is potential growth for the battle system from what we've seen from Arceus. But yeah, that's where I sit with Pokemon, or the Pokemon games. This was about as far as I thought. I didn't expect the stream to go long, and at the same time, I didn't think it'd be so quick. My brain hurts. Oh, I'm very tired. I possibly would have started earlier if it wasn't for the fact that, Kelly was still here. She'd been over on the weekend, and I wanted to see her off. And we went out and did things, and yeah, I might have streamed earlier, but again, it's important that I spend what time I have with her, actually with her. Oh dear. Well, this has been something different. So, if I ever plan to do tier lists again, which maybe I'll leave it to the Discord for people to suggest things. We do have a suggestion box for a reason. Now you can suggest things to rate. I know I didn't do the letter system for the games. If I can work out a letter system properly, I probably would. But for games, I feel like the terrible, bad, pass, good, great, excellent system that I've used is the best way to do it. The reason being, terrible has very specific rules. Bad has not very precise rules on whether it is a bad game or not, but it doesn't mean that you can't have fun with it. A pass doesn't mean that it's better than a bad game. It just means that it is a technically evenly balanced between its good and bad qualities. A good game doesn't necessarily mean it's fun. Well, no, actually. If a game is not fun, it'd be a pass. Good game is definitely a sign that it is worth playing, if I wouldn't give its recommendations as a bad game. Great. It's very replayable. And I don't mean like, oh, the content changes upload, like you would actually want to play the same game over and over again. Like, I would put Super Mario 64 down as a great game because it's a game that I feel I can just restart and play over. Just vanilla, not speedrun necessarily, just play through casually. I put Banjo-Kazooie in that category as well. As long as I don't have to 100% Rusty Bucket Bay again. If you want to see that pain, I do actually have a playthrough of it on the YouTube channel, so I'll put the socials up if I remember how to spell. So yeah, on my YouTube is a complete playthrough of Banjo-Kazooie. So there's some examples of great games. Well, actually, Would I consider either of them excellent? Well, immediately I said Rusty Bucket Bay, so that hampers Banjo-Kazooie from being excellent because it's not something I want to 100%. Mario 64, on the other hand, the main thing that I would call drawbacks on it is its art style isn't for everyone. It is old. There have been remakes of it. There is the one on Switch Online, I think. Not sure how that plays. There was the briefly released, what was it, 50th anniversary collection? Apparently was good on that. And there's also the DS remake of 64. So there are variants of it that don't use the classic art style, or at least have cleaned it up. So playing it on the classic hardware isn't a necessity. So I don't know if I'd call it excellent, but it's definitely great. Excellent is very hard to achieve in my book. But yes, if anyone has suggestions for like another tier list, be it something related to video games or board card games, something not directly related to games, I may be willing to do it and just do it as a short section, like a break period. I feel like doing this as a test and seeing how this went was a good idea. Probably am a bit too tired to be doing this at the moment, so I will be looking over this later myself. But this is a nice short stream that I'm pretty sure people will be able to watch later at a more reasonable time for them. This has been fun. If anyone dares me to like do whatever the hell it is, waifu picks, I'm going to tell you now, it'll be boring. So don't bother. It's not going to be interesting as you think. That's not bait. I swear. It isn't bait. I'm being honest. And with that, this brain dead computer is gonna go power off. Oh dear. Yeah, I don't think there'll be any streams this week. Other than this, I've got plenty of stuff that I need to be doing. If anyone did see the emotes that went up on the Discord, I may manage to get some done, so we'll get past the 9 and into double digits, but we'll see what happens. Again, you may have noticed no video went up today. I haven't managed to get any edited. I think there might just not be any done for a couple of weeks until I get this semester over with, so yeah, we're still going to be in the slow pay lane for a bit. But that's all for today. I'm going to go relax.